All right, good evening, guys. Well, welcome to the District 6 Advisory Board meeting for April 8th, 2024. Councilmember Ballard is unable to be with us tonight, so we're gonna go ahead and start the meeting. If we can start with board members, introduce them themselves and the neighborhood association that they represent. We can start with Scott.
How y'all doing? Scott Lucas. I represent Pleasant Valley. Mark Baker. Mark Baker, Lakeridge. And North Riverside. Leads in Haven, Fulton. Like the one in Midtown. And Zach Gaylord in Riverside.
All right, thank you guys. My name's Ana Lopez and I'm the Community Service Representative for District 6. We do have a board member. Sergio, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, Sergio Devora Najera, El Pueblo neighborhood.
All right, thank you. With that, we can go ahead and call this meeting to order. First, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Jamie Buster. She is our city clerk and she will be administering the oath of office for DAP members initiating their new term for 2024.
And we get video up for Sergio. So we need to do that.
Let me pull them out real quick. There he is.
Okay, perfect. All right, good evening, everyone. Jamie Buster, City Clerk. DAB members, if you could please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States.
Solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of Kansas.
And the Constitution of the State of Kansas.
And faithfully discharge the duties.
Faithfully discharge the duties.
The District 6 Advisory Board. Of the
District Advisory Board.
of the City of Wichita, Kansas, so help me God.
City of Wichita, Kansas, so help me God.
All right, those that are here, if you could sign your oath of office in your acceptance letter, and I'll come by and pick them up. Sergio, we will send you yours via email.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Got it? All right. All right, we can go ahead and move on. We have the approval of the agenda for tonight's meeting, April 8th, 2024. Do I have a motion and a second?
I move to approve the agenda.
All right, all those in favor?
Hi.
Thank you. We can go ahead and we also have the approvals of the approval of the minutes for the March 11th, 2024 meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you. All right, with that, we can go ahead and hear our staff presentation from Wichita Fire Department.
Good evening, my name is Roger Zondo, captain of the Wichita Fire Department. I'm at Fire 67, which is 26 which is right behind the new car wash, up there, right behind the Dillons. Right there at 21st Avenue. Just a few things real brief. April is Birdman Month. It's traditionally a Birdman Month for the last several years. It's about air quality. Last Friday, for example, we had a lot of snow hanging in the air that was actually coming from Oklahoma, is my understanding, from burning grasslands out there and doing that. So what the burn ban does mean is that, for normal folks, no chimney fires. You can't have your chimney going in the evening, and burning. It does allow for cooking fires. If you want to grill outside, that's fine. But other than that, there's no burning leaves, no burning anything else at the burn ban. I will tell you just as a matter of practice, when we go out on those, I give everybody get a jail-free card on those the first time out. I tell them there's a burn ban on, you know, until we burn it to, like trash or something like that. You know, we're gonna put it out, and I tell them there's no citation here, but if I come back out because you relied it, it's gonna be a completely different conversation. And that usually works really well. And especially on the burn ban, because a lot of times people just don't know. And that's fine. We just,
Does that include fire pits?
fire pits, I would, it has to be a ceremonial fire to be allowed. Right away, fire pits for the month of April is illegal. We get a lot of those too, you know. Secondly, on the stats for the month, you guys got in your packet, just looking under District 6, there were several couple pages of. We did have one major one in District 6, which was Morgan's Landing. It was March 14th, early afternoon, apartment complex right off 13th Street. What is it? 3628, something like that. West 13th Street had a fairly significant fire in the apartment complex there. We did have one victim there, a female. I believe it was her apartment that started. It was candles that got away from her. I don't know how that happened. Well, we weren't on shift. I was out there. But I think she tried to put it out herself a little bit. Managed to get fairly significant burns. I saw from the ER report, it's 30% burns. Last I heard, she is still in the hospital. So that was 2-3 weeks ago. That's pretty typical of burns. And so that was one major event. And once again, accidents like that are usually causes. Our number one cause for house fires is electric cooking. So that's kind of along that type of thing. Then lastly, internally, we do have a big week. That's the flood at water line break. If you go down a little bit in your report, the water line broke, caused downtown. There's like 6 blocks that had no water. That picture doesn't do it justice how big that water line was busted. There was a lot of water gushing out. But if you go on down, there's a Morgan's Landing. No, go back. It doesn't matter. I thought I saw a picture. That was a basement fire down south Carolina. This is in your guys' packet. So anyway, lastly, internally, this is a big week on the Wichita Fire Department. It's big we do a proposal list every 2 years. The list is good for 2 years. We have about 70 guys, between captains and lieutenants, taking the test. It's a written test, and then an assessment, and we establish a rank order list, and promotions will come off that list for the next 2 years. So it's been a big week for those guys. They spent a lot of time studying, but we're doing assessments this week. Our training ground is where we do it down on 31st Street is shut down, except for doing those assessments. So it's a big deal for us. Just to give you an idea, our first position for rank is lieutenant. You have to have 7 years on the job before you get to take that test. So it's a career type of deal. It's a long look of trying to get promoted. And then once you make lieutenant, you have to have at least 2 years integrated lieutenant before you can get the captain's test, which is excellent. So it's a big week, exciting. Guys put in a ton of time, and I hope they all do well. With that, I don't have anything else, but I'll take any questions anybody's got. None? That is great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. Have a good one. All right, and up next, we have Wichita Police Department.
Hello, I'm Officer Soto. I'm the community police officer for beats 4849, Patrol North, basically that's 13th in the north city limits, Hoover, and Hydraulic, kind of goes in the So really the only things I wanted to talk about were some scams that, people have been getting scammed on. Most recently, there was a, computer message that popped up saying, hey, call this number. They called and said, hey, we found some illegal things on your computer. You need to send us some money or, you know, there's gonna be a warrant for your arrest. So that individual ended up sending, $11,000 in cash, via US mail. So that money is probably gone. Other people have been calling and saying, hey, this is your grandson, I'm in trouble, I need you to help me out, and, I'm gonna send a bondsman over there. And this wasn't here, but this was in Western Kansas, and I believe they ended up send $15,000 in cash. So, scams like that, if it's somebody that, they say that is related to you, you can always hang up, call them, say, hey, are you okay? I just received a call their parents. Usually they try to say it's a grandchild. And say, hey, is everything okay with, you know, this person? I just got a phone call saying that, they're needing some help. The other thing was, on the 2nd of April, Northside, responded to a shooting area of 20th and Wellington. There was, one individual, that, ended up, having to get, medical treatment at a hospital. We did make 2 arrests. So if you have any information on that, if we haven't talked to you, normally we knock on pretty much every door in that area looking for witnesses or video. You can always reach out to me, Dave Soto at wichita.gov, and I can get a statement from you. Anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
And I am Officer Williams, from Patrol West, 15 beats. And just to piggyback off of the larcenies, not the larcenies, but the, frauds. We did get a lot of those also over the phone and over the mail, over email. And if somebody's asking you to go to different locations to be able to pull out money and send money and, you know, don't do that because we did have somebody lost over $30,000 on that, so. With that being said, going into larcenies, we are having a lot more larcenies just in the area. Please make sure that we're locking our doors. We do have signs up at some places, you know, that tells you to remind you not to leave your purse or your bag in the car. We've also had larceny of guns in cars, so that has to slow down. If you've seen any of these signs up, just know that there's a lot of officers down there, Soto and we're both doing the same thing, but we also assist with the hot team. And so we assist on cleanups whenever we have stuff like even along the river or in neighborhoods where camps are set up. So just trying to get those cleaned up so that we're not having a ton of trash all over the place. As far as the stats and everything go, the stats for 13 beat were down this month. I tried to pull up the whole area, but for whatever reason, my computer did not want to work with me. But all the part 1 crimes were down. Burglary was down 33%. Larceny was down 32%. Everything else is pretty much down. One of the areas that we're having an issue at is larcenies all over the board, I believe. I don't know what your numbers look like, but I know that we were having ours over in the area of exploration place. So whenever the mom, we're going out with the kids or the dad going with the kids, don't leave stuff in the car because people are checking those hands. The last thing, we had our second chance Thursday on the 28th of March. We ended up having a record number of miles. We had over 250 people. So we got a lot of warrants cleared, a lot of people got their licenses. So. It won't be for another 3 months. But I'll definitely get that information out. We need to get that out sooner so that we can get people there. I would love to do this a lot more, but right now we have it every quarter, so we can get as many people as possible. But as far as traffic warrants, I mean, even if we have 250 people that come in, there's still thousands of traffic warrants that are out there. The people still don't believe that they can go in there and go taken care of. Other than that, does anybody have any questions?
The resource to, I've had some neighborhood questions on the speeding. I know there's some things you guys can do to set up, to monitor.
Yeah, so
Did we just go with our community, our CRO for that? Or?
just go with the community policing officer, depending on where you are, like if it's out west, it's Lori Camry, it's what I work with her, yeah. So I work with her because that machine's really heavy, so.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so we all have one, I think that every side of town has one. But you can track the traffic to see like what times and what locations, which direction. And, you know, it just shows all the speeds that are going all the way up.
It's 25th Street. From,
235?
Hammond to 235.
Okay.
It's like that street. Neighborhood people.
Do you know?
They've had the signs there before. I've seen them before there. Before you said Hammond into 235,
Right.
it's median in the middle.
Yeah. And I know, yeah, it pops up out and every now and again. So.
Yeah, I know you can park on the side over there. I know it gets kind of hairy if you're trying to drive fast on that street.
Right, yeah.
So,
And it's your standard time, which, you know, it's before work, coming home. Those things.
I will let her know about it to see if we can get it posted up there. Yes,
I'm not talking about the speed, well, I know the speed on Waco, believe me. But, what I'm wondering, this maybe doesn't affect your, who do I contact? I know it's gonna be a long-term thing. 21st Street from Broadway to Waco. It goes 2 lanes, both, you know, it's going 2 lanes, and then it gets to Broadway, and they narrow it down to 1 lane only for 1 solid mile till they get to Arkansas. And that is so bottleneck up, how way you want to phrase it. I know the other day I was just going down Waco in the turning lane. I had to sit there at another stoplight because they're lined up all the way down that whole mile, and then they block the intersection. And you can, anybody that lives in that area sees that several times a day, well, more than several.
Especially after, school lets out at North High.
Well, this was during the daytime.
Okay.
It was, yeah, North High is worse, but it's more, not even so much North High, you've got all the people coming that are headed west on 21st. They've been getting 2 lanes all that way. They hit Broadway there, and then they go down to 1 lane for 1 solid mile, and then you get back to 2 lanes on Arkansas. And
Yeah.
you've got all these people funneling in.
I think they did that to slow the traffic down in that area. I can check with the traffic
Well, it
engineers.
definitely
but,
worked.
yeah, I mean, I understand because I try to go down Rosenthal to turn left and it's almost impossible. I usually just go around.
Where
Yeah.
it's just a
So,
standstill.
yeah.
I don't think that was a road diet. I think it's always been that way. I think, is that right, Suzie?
No, it used to be 2 lanes going east and west.
21st one was 2 lanes all the way to
Yeah.
Waco.
And probably somebody from the planning.
yeah, traffic engineering, Lee Carmichael.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So if you contact Lee Carmichael, so L Carmichael, at wichita.gov.
Well, I don't really think there's any real solution, but cause you'd have to put another lane there or something.
Yeah, he's a traffic engineer that actually goes out and studies all that stuff. So that's the person that is responsible for every single stop sign, everything, so.
What's his name?
Lee Carmichael.
Lee Carmichael?
And you can get a hold of him at Lee L Carmichael at wichita.gov.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye. Have a good day. Bye, guys. Good evening. All right, we can go ahead and move on to our item number 4 for tonight's agenda, Wichita Public Library, and we have Ethan to report all the wonderful things that the library is doing.
Well, that would take longer than I would like to spend here this evening.
Maybe just a few items then.
Just a few items. I sent out a written report, so I think the board's already got that. Right before I sent the report, we heard that Tom Orange, the author of There, our big read book, was going to have to cancel his in-person visit to Wichita, but they've managed to reschedule him to be a virtual visit. So even though he can't come to Wichita as planned to discuss his first book, There, and his new book, Wandering Stars, he will be coming live via Zoom, and it will require registration. So if you go to the Wichita Public Library's website, find the event calendar. We have a new event calendar. And you can register for that Zoom because I'm not sure how many bodies we can have in the Zoom meeting, but it might be like 300. And once we hit our maximum number of registrants, it closes.
The same time. before it's proposed.
Yes, it is. I believe it is the exact same time. It's April the 24th from 6 to 7 p.m. So I believe it's the same night and maybe the exact same time.
And are you going to have, the Zoom option available at the library? Like in the big meeting area space, is it kind of a general, like if you don't have Zoom, can you come to the library and watch it?
Let me find out and I'll let Alma know and she can send the info out. There are other, several other Big Read, programs scheduled for this month. If you have not had a chance to pick up a free copy of the book, go to one of the events coming up. There are, events this week, next week, all the way through the 24th, when, Tommy Orange appears virtually, and you can pick up a free copy of the book. And that'd be it for today. Unless anyone has any more questions, I'll find out about this soon.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we can go ahead and move on to the public portion of this agenda. There were no scheduled items this month. Is anybody here as a member of the public who's needing to speak on a topic that is not part of the agenda tonight?
Are you going to talk about? Okay.
I believe that is scheduled on next month's DAB agenda, so that we will hear that next month. Okay, perfect. Anybody else wanting to participate on the off-agenda items part of this meeting? No, with that, we can go ahead and move on to new business. We have the public participation and resident engagement presentation. We have Jamie, our city clerk, to present tonight.
Jamie Buster, city clerk. We're going to talk about public participation and engagement. So it's kind of broken out into two parts. So first we'll have the public agenda part of it, and then we're going to talk kind of about the communications department and different things that they do. So this was presented at our March 19th City Council meeting as well. Currently, so for public agenda and public comments during a city council meeting. Currently, public comment is allowed on certain council items outlined by city code. Those items are new business, unfinished business, housing, non-consent, and airport non-consent. Once the item has been presented by the staff member, the mayor and city council will ask questions to the staff, and then the mayor always reaches out for comment to the public. And that's when you don't have to sign up in advance to speak on those. You can just come up once the mayor asks for public comment. Now the public agenda, that's a separate section. Those are items that are not on that agenda that you want to talk about. So that you do have to sign up in advance for. You have to sign up by noon the Tuesday before. So say tomorrow at noon is the deadline for the April 16th meeting. To get my meetings in order of the morning. At this, we allow 5 public speakers each meeting, and they're allowed 5 minutes to speak. And any citizen wanting to speak on that, they do so. You just have to sign up in advance for it. So, City Council asked staff to do a comparative analysis with other cities to see how they go about public engagement and speaking at city council meetings. We contacted 5 peer cities, which was Tulsa, Fort Worth, Des Moines, Oklahoma City, and Kansas City. We found that not all of those cities allow public comments. Kansas City only allows it during a council standing meeting, so that's separate from their normal city council meetings. Wichita and Kansas City do not require advance registration for on-agenda items, but Tulsa and Des Moines do. And Wichita and Tulsa they allow the most time for public comments. On the next slide. You'll see a chart here of what the other cities offer. We both offer 5 minutes, Oklahoma City and Fort Worth is 3, Des Moines and Kansas City, Missouri offer 2 minutes each. 2 minutes, those times really fast. Sometimes 5 minutes seem forever, but it's really not if you have something you really want to talk about. Presented at our meeting, there were no financial considerations for it. Legal considerations was just that it must comply with the First Amendment. And that is public comment. Does anyone have questions on process or anything regarding public comment? Yes.
So when the 5 speakers, it's first come, first served. Is there any provisions for, is it possible for the same person to speak every time, or is there some way to give people more chances?
That's a good question. So for public agenda, you can only sign up once every 4 weeks. However, if you're at the meeting and there's like 3 or 4 agenda items you want to talk about, you can come up and speak on each of those.
That's what gets really fun.
Well, you get 5 minutes, but yeah, sometimes we get a lot for that. Any other questions? Shane?
What precipitated that last particular
Just to see how much we were engaging compared to other cities. And if we were allowing more time or less time, if we needed to allow more time and for, one was in the most time. So that's, one other thing was looking at that. You must sign up by noon Tuesday a week before. And maybe shifting that a little bit to maybe Friday. The week before.
And it used to be Friday, years ago.
If it was, I don't know, it's set by ordinance. So it has to be ordinance change. But yeah, they're kind of looking at shifting that to allow more people, because sometimes we don't have all 5 spots filled. And so just be to allow that.
A lot of people don't show up, and that's one reason.
A lot of people don't. Last week we had all 5 spots filled and we had 2 people showing to speak. So it does take time away from others, because we actually have to turn others away. And usually we're full, when people request time, they request it to me. When they request time to me, then I always offer other meetings, like we're booked on this one, but here's extra ones within the next month that are in the week instead. We try to accommodate as best we can, but if people don't make it, it does take away from somebody who wanted to.
Yeah, lately, different. I've been at legislative ones where they just, you sign up and they allow so much time, and how many people can speak. We can kind of just have backup. But
Yeah.
they want the meetings to be over.
Yeah. That's a good
I
suggestion.
mean, without,
Like an alternate or something that maybe doesn't show up. Yeah. Okay.
I just want to make a comment that I did. It does sound like a good idea to have a little bit more time, especially to have the next council meeting agenda come out, so people know if there's something that even say the topics can be made remain to that agenda. But just to say out loud, that it's got to be unlimited, that we have as much access as we do, and that I would hope that our agenda intent and direction would be to expand access rather than to look for ways to make public comment more efficient. If there's any place where we should probably avoid efficiency, it's in public participation and government, because we shouldn't expect people to be experts in the same way that council people or maybe DAB people are, they have things to say, and this is a time for them to say that. And so just to say in this forum, I hope that we continue to look for ways to increase participation regarding making the time that we're, oh, no, it's too much time. Well, yeah, there's a lot of things. So, thank you for looking at this.
And also the study. What we're talking about. Good. Zach, you were,
Yeah, I want more public participation. That's what they.
thank you.
Yeah.
I was saying, at least, we've done this comparison to the other city, it'd be something we should be bragging about. Hey, look, we allow 5 minutes in other cities, we shut them down after 2.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, just to compare, I mean, I'm not going about it too much, but I mean, Oklahoma is probably one of the worst states I've ever seen in terms of its ability for the public to participate in government. I mean, it's absolutely okay. Totally disconnected to speak at the legislature without being invited, and of course, who's invited to go speak at the legislature. So it's, some other context in those numbers too is maybe helpful just in terms of like, yeah, maybe these other cities are doing their council meetings a little bit more efficiently, but maybe they're on the state sites and that kind of thing. We need to know, I mean, I wouldn't wish Oklahoma's government on Oklahoma's period, so,
we're Kansas, so.
yeah.
This is sort of related, but at the last meeting, there was a long discussion about the legal and contract. And then later, after everybody left, like, go on for 2 hours. Were you there?
Yeah, I don't forever there.
But then later, like 45 minutes later, one of the council members brought up an off agenda item, and it wasn't really handled very well. We was able to add it to the agenda, or then they decided to postpone it. But the idea was to put changing the law, Kansas law, description of what newspaper is. Well, did they ever figure out what the protocol is? Because all the boards that I ever sat on, you have to ask the board if you can add an off-agenda item, and then they vote on whether or not to add it. And it is never one that can be voted on because the public hasn't known that. So I understand it's gonna be on there tomorrow. But that's just another public engagement that is frustrating for all of us who take time off, and we're down here, or we're off at you, and right, and when they have that happen, and nobody can do it.
They can take off-agenda items if the rest of the council permits it to,
But they didn't call for a vote.
and. Yeah, we did not. I'm trying to think back to my minutes, usually they do that during council member agenda portion, which that does not allow public comment. Right. So it's just, it was the timing that he pulled it and did it. But yeah, usually at that point, it does not allow public comments. But what he did was, his motion was to put it on our state legislative agenda, which is what we direct our lobbyists to talk about as a legislator for that session.
But don't the city council members have some kind of input as to whether or not that's actually done and what exactly needs to change about?
Correct, because the motion was amended to have that item put on the agenda for tomorrow for discussion.
Right, so they didn't hold a vote.
Right, it was just to have that item brought up this week.
I just think that's inappropriate.
So we'll move on to the next. The next is about, just that community engagement that we do. So our communications team has several different mechanisms that we use to get the word out. We have different changes in it. Before, you know, it was City 7, right, the newspaper. We've also added social media. There's Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, whatever. Next door, we do live streaming. We started podcasts. Podcasts were kind of came around and all the live streaming during COVID because people couldn't come to us and we were trying to figure out how can we go to them? How do we share this information with everyone? Other changes, you know, different platforms have different audiences. Not everybody who's on social media is print media. And everybody who's print media is social media. So it's just trying to find different ways to communicate with people in a way that reaches them. So who usually communicates with the city? Very engaged residents. We hear from a lot of the same people all the time. So how do we reach those we don't know? How do we engage those people? Most of the time it's only when something's coming up in their neighborhood that they want to talk about. It's when, you know, really when they have to, when they're forced to talk to City Hall. We don't want to force people to talk to City Hall. We just want people to talk to City Hall. We like people. A big thing that people like to talk about is our budget. I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but this is kind of, this is our community survey that we put out every year. The survey helps drive our budgets. The magenta area down here is the biggest concerns that people have that they want us to put our money towards. Public safety, streets, economic development, those are the big items that we always want input on. We put these surveys out on our website every year for people to fill out and engage and let us know how we can better spend our budget.
Are they, it's just posted on the website, or you send out emails or?
Yeah, it's posted on the website. Let's see, city council meetings, we broadcast those on channel 7, wichita.gov on the council's page, and also on our YouTube channel. We also broadcast the agenda review, and multiple other meetings. So like the DAB meetings, those are broadcast. We started having evening city council meetings again. We have 4 this year, 1 each quarter. Our next one is June 4th. It starts at 6 o'clock at night. The March 19th meeting was our first one, and it went to 11 o'clock. Yeah. Eat before you go, have snacks with you, you know, all that. Council also engages with the different speaking engagements they have in a lot of places. Mayor's media briefing with dads. A lot of them have breakfast. Maggie always brags about her breakfast and how good it is. Haven't gone yet, but I told her I would. You know, direct email, council, whenever a citizen has an issue that say they can't get on the agenda and speak about, like, you know what, here's your city council's email, here's your districts, contact your council member, let them know about your issue so that they're aware of it and start working with it. Phone interaction with the council and their CSRs. Boards and committee meetings. So we have 39 boards. Unofficially, I think it's like 42 boards. But 39 that are open to the public, much like this one. They're streamed live and recorded on YouTube for everybody to see. I know Maggie is really good about, she reads the comments. That happens on YouTube and all that when she's streaming both her dad and also during the council meetings. I know she watches that. And then budget engagement. Budget's a big one for us. We have budget workshops, we have budget town halls, social media town halls. On the website, there's the budget simulator. So you guys can put that, play around with. Dad meetings, council meetings, we try to reach as many people as we can, because especially in the next couple of years, the budget is really important. So we really have to have citizen input and engagement on that. If you have any other suggestions on how to reach people regarding budget, let us know. We would love to hear it. Our website, if you guys haven't seen our new website, it's fantastic. It's really awesome. You can search better on it, you can find stuff better on it. If you can't, if you find a glitch, let us know, we can fix it. It just launched 5 months ago.
Early December.
Okay, yeah, and, so there's still little bugs every now and then. Let us know, we're Tyler very responsive about fixing, yes.
Will you be adding all the planning department associated boards and commissions to the agendas and minutes from before 2003? Because they're not there this morning. And I know the minutes are now inside of the agenda, but I don't think the public knows that. I think you need a little.
You know, I did have somebody ask at my DAB last week, because I presented at DAB 3. And they did ask about the MAPC minutes. I did find them.
From before 2003, they're not in the agenda.
It takes a couple of clicks, but they're in there.
Okay.
Susie, right? Yeah, I can,
I've seen the videos, but not the agendas.
okay. I will make a note and, yeah, it took me a couple clicks.
Yeah, because it shows 2024 or 2023.
Okay,
On the agenda center page,
okay.
and then.
I'll look into it and I'll shoot you an email tomorrow.
Okay.
Cause yeah, I have it as I saw it, I'll send you.
6 years.
But yeah, so things like that we wanna know about and we can take care of those.
So great, it's fast.
Yeah, it's really great. It's really user friendly. We've got calendars on there. We have report issues on there. There's email notifications. You can sign up for the email to get notified on different things. It has, directory, staff directory on there. You can also sign up for city council emails and notifications for like the agendas. So to do that, there's the council page, you go to the very bottom, and there's a section there that, just put your email in and says for notifications. You can set it up to be notified of each board too.
I have one more question. I just thought of it because I was just at a meeting and somebody said they can't find out who the preservation committee is. I told them of course, but then they showed me that Christina Reach is listed as current. So if people want to have a question about their historic properties, they don't know where to go.
Okay, it would be Christina.
It is Christina, but she's listed as.
And that's
executive
probably
director.
her title. So, but she is over the preservation board. So, all right, so the website, you can find your city council member if you don't know what district you're in. I'm sure everybody here knows what district.
Man,
Yes,
this is my first meeting, you probably know, but to find it, I don't even know like how these council members are elected. And I told several people I was gonna go to the DAB meeting, like what on earth is that? Anybody I've talked to doesn't have any knowledge.
okay,
I know you put the district board will be meeting, well. They don't know that they're actually, I don't think 99% of them don't know that they just are welcome to come, yes, we are, welcome to come.
yeah.
And then they didn't know what district, I tried looking at that, and I like your new thing, yeah. And it works, I tried the potholes in twice, you were out within 24 hours. So
Oh, great,
kudos to that.
great.
And it is easier, I think, but I don't think, I had a hard time for sure knowing which district I was in.
Okay,
And we tried going on that website and maybe my phone isn't as good as others or several other people's wasn't, but you couldn't really tell that way by this. I couldn't tell which district for sure.
Okay, on the city council's page on the website, there is a find my district. And
I-
you click that link and then you can enter your address.
Okay.
You can also, if you go to ksvotes.org, it'll tell you what city district you're in, what county district
I
you're in.
think those,
State representative, state senator, your voting place,
candidatevotes.org.
KS votes.
Yeah, but the average person, I don't think knows that really.
And that's how we want to engage with consumers, so where you can know that. So I did make a note to get more, like, DAS notification. DAS is District Advisory Board, which is what this is.
Like how do you get a letter to get involved? Or
So we advise the district council member, Maggie Ballard, of this district. She usually runs the meeting, but she wasn't able to be here tonight, so our community representative is chair of the meeting.
But you do.
We were appointed by Maggie.
Oh, so it's somebody she knows that she appoints.
Well, we applied to fill, they have certain positions for each neighborhood. And when, I was interested in participating and there was an available board, and so I applied to fill that.
Yeah, there's a place on the website that say all the available boards.
Because there's 42,
Yeah.
39 official, but ultimately, they kind of seem like they are always looking for individuals.
But I was just wondering how, so. If you find out on the district thing, then you could apply and then your council member votes on who.
Yeah, there's, on the website, there's a boards and commissions page. And on that page, there's a place where you can fill out an application to volunteer on a board. You can select whatever board floats your boat, like transportation or the district advisory board or planning or whatever. And you can check those boxes. So then when a council member has an opening on that board, they can have your application right there and appoint you to that board.
And I think one of the things that you're gonna mention a little bit, a few slides down, is Civic Engagement Academy. That is an academy that residents are able to sign up for if you guys are wanting to attend. It's an 8-week session where residents who are wanting to get more civically engaged with their municipality, with the government, with their council members, you're able to learn more in deep as to like what are DAB meetings or council meetings, how do you get in touch with your council member? And you learn a lot more about the different departments and how they operate. So that's something that residents who are wanting to learn more like yourself, you're able to go ahead and attend those.
Yeah, I just missed that. I know they started one, but how often do they do that?
So they have that twice a year. So we can definitely keep you informed when they take when they're gonna open enrollment for the fall session.
It's a great program. It's kind of like a government 101 for citizens. It shows you everything about the city, different facets of the city, how we can help you, different things, different organizations.
And it's free.
You went through it, it's free. It is free. It is free.
And you can keep coming to their meetings here.
Yeah.
Learn stuff, because there's always new things we've talked about, different changes that are going through.
Yeah.
I'm on leave.
But just some other things,
Yes.
other things on the website, or you can make open records requests, the agendas and minutes are on there and such. So, social media, we have 55 plus social media avenues. So that's across all kinds of platforms, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Nextdoor, TikTok, whatever. It's all over all that. We do the social media town halls, we have live Q&As. The online surveys, like the budget survey, so all kinds of ways to stay engaged. And then the civic engagement, this is Civic Engagement Academy. Fantastic, fantastic program. We also have a police academy. We can learn about the different things that the officers do, different beats, what a beat is, what the different areas are. Fire academy as well. For youth, we don't have any youth in there, but we have Mayor Youth Council. It's a great program. Mayor leads it, does different things with youth. And then we have other events that we're present at. Neighborhood meetings, you know, the farmers market, open streets. You guys know open streets, it's always a fun event. Yeah.
Any reason why they changed that to the 31st of October instead of September? For the open street on Douglas,
Oh, no, that's kind of weird, but on Halloween,
October 13th.
oh, 13th, I say, we said 31st, something like that.
No, I'm sorry, October 13th, instead of the disgrace.
Oh, sure. So yeah, other engagement opportunities are the town hall meetings, public meetings. So different district meetings, different community meetings. Like the rec has a meeting, like the KDHE meeting on 29th and Grove. That was a big meeting regarding the contamination zones that we participated in. Just different things to engage people. Television, print media. So we've got, you know, the mayor does various things with the different stations. I think she has a sentence on them. The media news routines, we do those both at City Hall and out in the public. And then we also publish legal notices if it's not evil. Let's see. Other city communications that we put out, water boil advisories. So we blasted out all over the news, social media, everything to get everybody, reach as many people as we could with that. It's a big thing. The water rebate program, that we've also put at the different home improvement stores. There's information there, I think we'll QR code in different stuff. Home improvement stores when you buy a water, yeah, water efficient, that's it. Water efficient device. Fireworks ordinance changes, those are always big engagements because there's 2 big sites in that. So how do we get people involved with that? Lately, we have started using social media influencers on stuff. I don't know if you saw, we just have he was out repairing potholes with Public Works. So that reaches a whole nother audience that we, typical government does not reach. So we have a huge following, who's out there doing that, reaches more people. We have different influencers and different aspects of the community, the Hispanic community, family and parents. Like if, you know, with shamans, they're another influencer. Paid media, we have the radio, we have digital TV, print publications, billboards, social media. We have, let's see, even print wraps on cars, buses, all that. Recruitment. The city's out at career fairs. We also post our things on social media. It's the vehicle decals again, or we can put it on like city vehicles like, hey, come work with us. Signage. I don't know. Probably on Broadway, have you guys seen like the new like resurfacing signs whenever it's all torn up? People are like, oh my gosh, you tore off half of our road, what's happening? So we put these things in, like, hey, we're coming back. We just gotta, you know, turn off the first layer, let it kind of settle, do all this stuff, we'll be back, we'll fix it. Because people would complain. So we started putting up these fun little signs. We have different yard signs for events too. Other communications, you know, there's direct mail for topics like, planning a lot of times is required to send out notices to a certain area. We also do that with other things. We can, gear it towards different zip codes and stuff. Send out mailings. We have the call center chat on our website. We also have the various podcasts, water bill communications, just kind of different little tiny tools that we can use. For internal communication, for cities, for staff working at the city. We have the citywide email, we have an employee appreciation committee. We're trying to work on things to do better internally with communication. A lot of times we're great at getting the word out to people, but not inside people. So we're working on ways to do that. But sometimes people are, I didn't even know how that's happening. So it's kind of that, and kind of promote it between the different departments and who's doing what. And that is, pretty much it on the communication portion. So what all suggestions do you guys have for better communication? Like what other ways do you want the city to engage with the public? Yes.
I think, thank you for bringing it and explaining what you are doing. I did see a lot of non-internet work on there, which I think is good, and I'm just looking up real quickly, seeing, I saw a article from 2020 was the fastest one I could find, but I bet it's not changed too much at around 20% of Wichita does not have access to internet. That seems like, oh, well, that's 20%, but that could be around 1,000 people here. One thing I didn't see a whole lot of focus on in terms of like channels of communication, thinking online was neighborhood association involvement. And, we happen to live in a district with what I think is probably several pretty strong or like at least well-established, whether or not they're strong or not, they're well-established neighborhood associations. But I know that there are several neighborhoods in the city and even in this district that don't have an established neighborhood association. And my suspicion is that, well, my speculation is that the city is waiting for that to happen. And I don't know why. I think if you have a neighborhood that you know doesn't have a neighborhood association, that's a civic engagement project that the city should be taking and finding and recruiting people to start that and giving them support through the establishment of that, because it only goes into developing a really strong base of community engagement in places where people can actually see the impact like almost immediately in terms of their ability to reach out to their neighbors and communicate with city representatives. And then, secondly, I would say if you don't have a representative at each or a neighborhood association meeting every quarter, in every neighborhood, then you're missing another opportunity to engage people where they are already. And, a lot of the communication, I work in communications, and I very much am not going to give you any advice from my perspective for that. But I've got more of my empathy for that sort of thing too. But, some of the challenges is we want to communicate and we say we want engagement, but oftentimes engagement changes the way that we're communicating. And that can be a challenge as well, but we really do want that like dynamic, like that response back. And the people who want our jobs to change in that regard, we want the people from us. And so I would just encourage you to think maybe more about like, what is the lowest level that you can get to in person and have things that impact like on a block by block basis, and maybe the lowest one through theirs. Yeah, I think this, and maybe we can, and I'm sorry, I'm going to regulate this, but just in the interest of coordination, if we could do that before and then take.
Those neighborhood associations, I think, are already there. It's just not a lot of them are active.
Yeah, maybe it's.
I found, doing research just around, my wife's district, 15 neighborhood associations within Senate District 25. So, and I think some of them are pretty active, but, I think some of them, they're existent, but whether there's actually open meetings regularly.
So I wanted to actually, I thought the same thing about the neighborhood kind of associations. And so for Midtown, we have a couple of really active.
Where do they meet?
Often one is in St. Paul's, Lutheran on Waco. But one of the conversations that we've been having in our house is about this very thing. And so I've been saying it'd be really helpful if the city would have had a resource for us to be able to kind of map out kind of like 6,300 households in the town or something crazy, or I mean it's a nutty number, right? So the 45 people who show up and are active,
Right.
we gotta figure out the better. And I think this is all fantastic, what you all are doing, but I do think that we need some kind of. I think there's a little bit, there's some energy in on some of our parts to kind of reach out and do a little more. But I think we need a little bit of guidance on that, on how to do that.
You know, we're looking at neighborhood association.
Right, and how do we, like, what are the, how do you look at that? How do you start figuring that out? Like, it's not like we're drawing a map, that's like a metaphor, it's just not.
Yeah, there's a Wichita Independent Neighborhood when, and they, on their website, they list all the, where they meet and what they consider their boundaries to be. It's like North Riverside, we consider 21st to 13th.
But even then, yeah, we changed Benjamin Hills, Pleasant Valley, and that's a year process.
Right.
To figure out where the boundaries are. And then what's the process to actually change those, which all of it was put here in the policy. Who knew at the end of the day, right? But I think your point about, John Todd and I have had this conversation before too. It is truly the same 45 people. Or 50 people, whatever you're doing, and then they boil it down, it's the same 12 or 15 that actually do it, right? So I don't know, we've had this internal discussion with my neighborhood association too, and try to, whether it's neighborhood cleanup or getting interesting neighborhood specific topics or city, we've had police chief Maggie, Ryan Beatty, fill in the blank, to present, and you still get the same 45, you might get 50 that would, right? But ultimately, I don't think there's not a magic thing. I think honestly, and we talked about the Civic Engagement Academy, it is truly, I think, a hallmark that we don't really highlight enough in Wichita. That is really, really cool. I'm a Civic Engagement Academy graduate. And when I moved to Wichita, the first thing I did is I looked at the city, is I reached out to my council person and said, how can I get involved? Right. And she said, go look at the Civic Engagement Academy. So, I think that's something, actually, I spoke to the council about it a couple of times of how important it is to highlight.
Other question I have is, and I know that the school board is very separate from the city. Right. But we do have a lot of neighborhood schools. It seems like a really obvious place to engage us. And like those of us with kids in those schools, like we do care, that others don't care, but like we have like some real vested interest in that locality. Right? So I think that's another place where engagement can occur.
And I think maybe the final thing to say, and then, yes, I appreciate, but, is maybe, and I'm gonna stick on the neighborhood association thing and thinking like more creatively about maybe some advertising, but just like what would the neighborhood associations do with $1,000 a quarter that was provided by the city? We have in Riverside, we've got a newspaper that is mostly paid for itself-ish by advertising that's in there. And that's fine, but not all neighborhoods are as large or any circulation that can support that. I would think just from just strictly marketing, that is far more impactful. And it goes right back into the communities to give these neighborhood associations that would money to do their own work, then getting kicked off that money. Like that seems to me something like that you could actually have like the media and people see the support from the city and they see this is a viable thing that they want to participate in. Because even for Riverside, which has, a fairly stable and active, they've been begging people to be president of that neighborhood association for about 5 years. They can't get rid of it. You have these poor people who are no, please, I don't want to do this anymore.
The 45 comes down to like 1 or 2.
Yeah, so, but that's also because I think that people see, okay, they get a chili cook-off every once in a while, but, I still have a hard time getting, some tangible thing. And so, again, like a little bit of going where people, like building up from the bottom rather than trying to communicate from the top, maybe in the group.
not even the associations, I mean, just me having been going the last 3 or 4 years and it helps my feeling of community.
I would add that, the city staff is generally excellent. I mean, it's usually when somebody has a problem that they reach out and try and find the right staff person to help them with their problem. And if they can, if you get them to stick with it long enough to find the right person, they almost always get the right answer. And if they don't, they definitely get put in the direction that is helpful. And if you can interact with the city staff, whether that be a table with the ICP of the streets, or you can connect somebody before they have a problem and they know, at least who they can reach out to find the right person. It's a much better experience overall. So the easier you can come, you can connect people with the city staff, the much better you're going to go.
And I will say, back to like, saying 45 people showing up this stuff. Our biggest town halls that we had was recently, it was the homeless town hall. There was over 300 people, I think, at that. Because that was the type of interest that we all had, we're all of us, and so it's trying to engage people who that how can we make this topics up there for people to come?
So what is the role of planning? Don't you have a mechanism to set up associations and areas that are not one? I mean, isn't that what you're supposed to do? Maybe they need, like, aren't they a liaison? Isn't that?
It sounds like business council.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The last conversation we had with them was they do not see them. They're advising role to neighborhood associations.
I mean, they go sponsor the Christmas dinner right on.
I want to answer that.
There is a vacuum and a real need for citizen leadership from them. I think the concept is one of them. I think it's you know, you talked about, once you get elected, there's another place where I do their association, and now you'll get a lifetime appointment. And that's not always good. But when, like, very simple, there, not how whole thing, like, if anyone in the room has an interest in, we use our neighborhood association, when I think it's an opportunity to do it. And maybe rather than doing it, basically, a neighborhood association, it needs some support for them.
And Jamie, current president is a SharePoint partner.
Oh, yes.
That's who you need to be.
I think a lot of it is too, right? It's also the ones that are civically engaged. It's how do you teach us to teach others, right?
Yeah.
And so then it becomes a case of like, being an independent business owner, all right, what can I do to share information from the city on my, being, not that I'm an influencer by any means, but, from engaging businesses to start sharing information that the city does post, because it's really good information and it's valuable information to the community. So unless I was thinking about this with some of the other COC areas and things like that, where like, how do we communicate, like, teaching, basically having like a workshop or something, like how do we teach businesses to share the city's information and what's valuable to share, right? And a lot of times, I'll share stuff in the city because I can't think of anything else to share, and I'm like, have this brain, like, well, what do I share now? It's like, okay, well, I can always go to the city's page. There's lots of good information, so then engaging other businesses. So maybe through the chamber, maybe through, the Builders Association, the Realtors Association, all of our different associations around town, engaging those folks. to help share information with citizens.
So, and there's,
I would argue from what you just said. You are an influencer. Yeah. So for you just to be here tonight and then share that, you're an influencer. So, you know, how can we bottle that up and, you know, pass that on?
and there's also other organizations. I don't know, guys, if you, have you guys heard about the neighborhood movement? So they're also working in having residents start at a more local, so maybe your street, you talk to your neighbors, you invite them to the meeting, you bring them along with you to your neighborhood association meeting. So they're also working on how to start just within your block, and then just go spread that throughout the whole neighborhood. So there's other organizations who are also working towards that goal, just getting citizens to be more civically engaged.
In the neighborhood night out that we've had, you know, connected for a long time, if you apply at a time, you can have your block closed off and, you know, have a party with the kids.
The city used to, I did that in my block,
Yeah.
invited everybody, the fire department came out.
Yeah, well, usually that's supposed to. Yeah, I really appreciate this.
Yes.
All the words are very nice. And, being able to get it out to the, you know, that's so.
Of course, anytime. And I mean, I'm a city clerk, so feel free to contact me. My name is Jamie Buster, my email is jmbuster, which is on my website. Better to email me than try to call because you have to go through the call center to reach me. So always shoot me an email. I'm always happy to help everybody. All right, thank you guys so much.
Madam Chair, we're gonna do an official public comment period.
For this topic, I think that's what we did when we had the open floor, but if you already wanted to speak, go ahead. All right, perfect. Jamie, if you want to just hang out for a little bit.
And if you want, I can email it to you, Jamie.
Okay.
My name is Vince Hancock, I'm from the Galena neighborhood. Shout out to my business neighbors here, Ben and Lee. Busy. They're awesome. My professional background comes from information technology and mass communication. Chronologically, I'm placed right in between the baby boomers and Generation Z. In the time allowed, I cannot fully educate you on the types of propaganda, governance abuse, communications, to manipulate voters over the centuries. But I do want you to keep in mind that our communication studies using isn't as good as it could be. I seriously considered applying for the police department's PIO position last fall, and decided I could be more effective by staying where I am instead of not being able to talk about things that are important to my neighbors. Here were three very important bullet points from that PIO position that I feel apply whether you're working public relations for the police department or for the city of Wichita. Develop and implement a comprehensive communication plans that include strategies and tactics for effective communication with the media, community groups, and other stakeholders. Develop and maintain relationships with local media outlets, including newspaper, television stations, radio stations, and other community influencers. Write and distribute news releases, media advisories, and other communications materials as necessary to inform the public and promote the department's initiatives, programs, and accomplishments. When I asked him about Second Chance Thursday, I said, are you going to issue a news release with full details about when the upcoming Second Chance Thursday is, and will that be on Wichita? The response I got was, and I quote, the Wichita Police Department actively uses social media to announce upcoming Second Chance Thursday dates and other pertinent information. We consistently post these messages on our official social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We highly encourage your neighborhood association and all its valued members to follow these accounts. Engage with us on social media will ensure that you receive timely updates, enhancing your ability to participate and share these opportunities with your community. It feels like once our government PR staff finds out about social media, they forget how to write and publish press releases. Only the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, why. Those are the things that our neighborhoods need to be able to put in their newsletters, and we need to not 2 days ahead of time, so that we can tell people about control things like Second Chance Thursday. like the 4 city council meetings that come up in the evening. There's not been a single press release issued for those 4 meetings. In my opinion, those 4 board meetings of the year for the average person who has to work till at 5:30. Several years ago, a citizen at Wichita City Council complained about being surprised by a particular city agenda item. Then former Mayor Jeff Longwell asked, am I seriously expected to knock on every citizen's door? If a citizen is unwilling to bridge the communications gap, there may not be a way to reach them. They have to seek out the neighborhood association or their city council. Traditional media partners have no obligation to cover any particular government news items. We must demand all communications with traditional media be also made available on the city website. If the constituents who choose not to engage in social media, our PR department has basically said, take a hike. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you, Jamie. All right, with that, we can go ahead and move on to our next agenda item. We have a planning case, zone 2024-0012.
Good evening, everyone. Philip Ziegenberger with the Planning Department. This item before you is a change request in the Delano neighborhood. Located at 115 and 121 North Oak. This is just north of Douglas and west of Sycamore. The properties in question are under the ownership of Hutton and they're currently zoned limited industrial. We're requesting central business district. The subject site is currently available in office spaces constructed in 1948 and 68. The applicant is requesting the zone change to not be running nearby properties and to allow for necessary development. So the Hutton main offices are on the right up against Sycamore. They've purchased properties across the street. You can think one of the storefronts on Douglas. But either way, also recently is and actually City Council just approved it officially, have vacated the north portion of North Oak in order to create a cohesive campus that allows them to fence it off and building into parking. And it's now a private area instead of a public area. That went through the necessary channels in terms of fire and traffic review and things like that. And so this is part of their overall plan to essentially expand their campus over into these buildings to the west. If you go to the zoning map, it's the next one down. Anything in light blue is central business district. It's something that we've been doing and essentially came up from notes. Just because, especially in the Delano area where there's a lack of parking, what we don't want is our buildings are being knocked down in order to meet a parking requirement. And a lot of the buildings in the Delano area were constructed before parking requirements sort of thing. And so their campus is central business district. And then anything purple limited industrial, which is general commercial, limited commercial along that list. So it definitely fits in with the area. Performance and comprehensive plan, we find it is conformance with comprehensive plan, identify the area for residential and employment mix. Essentially, this really you're taking out limited industrial, which is another thing within the building plan of like down zoning and taking up some of these very high incentives within Delano, kind of the added from the past of when Delano was more industrial, heavily commercialized. And central business district also accomplishes that. We'll just skip to the Delano neighborhood plan, which identifies appropriate for mixed use. So offices can be a good part of that as well. Overall staff is recommending approval. This went to planning commission on the 28th. They recommended approval with the end. This is about 9 weeks ago. Since the sections you have to. Is anybody objecting? No. We have the agent for the applicant with Boston Company also representing some time.
We have plans to alter the facade and working all of that.
Watch for that. They could, I'm a Kaufman Company agent for the applicant.
as far as updating the facade, there was some old structure. And actually a building structure kind of back this way that we gonna take down and beautify, so we're looking just to have a better looking campus on both sides.
Just in, seems pretty support, but just in terms of like the sign changes, would you consider like, we talked a little bit about like downzoning, the lane and stuff, is this downzoning, is it a lateral thing, is there like?
It's mostly a downzoning, I mean, some of the businesses that can allow some tires and things, but it does, what is a lot of limited industrial versus a lot of some businesses. It's definitely a lot more intense. Industrial, not to mention, industrial is not allowed for residential, currently using residential, either way, but continue that trend of making the zoning more appropriate for where the Waymo is headed, so that we start avoiding some of the conflicting uses that are right next to each other that we find throughout the linear right now. There isn't like an opportunity where we're taking out some of the industrial living, and we really don't want that in the one. It's not necessarily used that way right now, but it could obviously. So yes, CBD is a downzoning on the one side, in terms of the uses. It has its other benefits of the zero lot line setback, so they continue the existing type of structures there without having to have building setbacks, like some of the industrial would have to have. Get rid of the off-street parking requirement thing, so we're not necessarily promoting people losing buildings next door in order to provide them a parking lot.
Yeah, it's mainly just, you know, the going that we currently have.
Additional office space.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any public comment on this zoning case? Vince, you have 5 minutes.
But apologies to Emily, she already knows what I'm gonna say, I even emailed it to her, right before the meeting. On behalf of the Delaney Neighborhood Association, this is definitely a good thing, we approve it, it's the right thing. Even though Central Business District was designed for retail, this meets all the requirements of the 2019 neighborhood plan, so I encourage you guys to go ahead and go for that. The remainder of my comments are directed at being constructive criticism of our planning staff, so that we can really get this 2019 plan continuing to push forward. We have requested to the director of planning multiple times consideration today both reasons the Central Business District, all the way from the river, pretty much on one street. We would write a letter to each of the owners and say, hey, would CBD make sense for you to have it? And then for those that opt out, say, okay, no big deal. But instead of doing it one piece at a time, all the way down Douglas, and maybe half a block over there, it makes sense to do them both. Oh, wait, that's gonna happen someday. In the meantime, I also appreciate that you guys are volunteers, you're giving your time to be here tonight, but I encourage you, if you get a chance, and it's not majorly everywhere, go visit these properties for these spaces to get a better idea of what's going on. Because if you would have done that, you would have found out the case report put together by planning staff member who is not here tonight, wasn't even in the office this week, there are clear deficiencies in that report. On page 2, there's a table that talks about the difference between limited industrial and Central Business District. As Philip just mentioned, it talks about the no parking requirement at all. That table doesn't tell you that one of the reasons why our businesses want Central Business District. Parking is not in that table, it's a clear deficiency. On page 3, it says that no Oak Street has no sidewalks. There's the sidewalk. It's right there, it just ends at the front door. The applicant has told me they do plan on extending that sidewalk, which is small to do there. Thank you, Ben, makes perfect sense. The report makes no mentions of trees, and we now I find out vacated right away. There are 2 trunks that are supposed to get ground up pretty soon. The photo on page 10, that looks west, this bridge right here, that one is outdated and deceptive. It doesn't show the fact that the stones in the right of way. It doesn't show that a building over here is completely missing, and it doesn't show that the facade has already been completely ripped off of that building. Been that way for at least 2 weeks, because I went by during the Patty's parade and said, wow, that's already started. And lastly, based on the visual evidence, I am disappointed that they obviously started this project Seems like the permitting and planning process is just an afterthought. But this is something going on for a month before they need that position for them. That doesn't seem to us. Any questions? Very fine.
Do we have additional members of the public who want to comment, provide comment on this case? No? With that, we bring it back to the board for question, comments, or a motion.
We still have Sergio.
We do.
Yes, I am here.
There he is. All right, who moved the motion? Brian, who was the second? Lisa. All right, all in favor?
Hi.
All right. It looks like it's approved 7-0. All right, the next item on our agenda is a consolidated plan and annual action plan. We are still waiting from representatives from the housing department to join our virtual meeting. They're currently at DAP 2, so we can go ahead and move on to our board agenda and just come back to item number 9. Does anybody have any updates, issues, or reports from your neighborhoods?
We talked about the Mission Park Children's when we did it last time, and you know, I think we did it on there. Okay, whatever. I reached out to them, and if anybody wants to go, we're having that. They're gonna do talk with you what all of you Friday. See if I have any. What's the other? On the corner of Emporia and yeah. Yeah. With one of the five. No, there's the old Roman. Yeah, that's, oh.
Since we're killing time, I will bring up Park Run one more time. Of course, we do that at Exploration Place every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. We run, it's all volunteer run, time free 5 days that you can kids, bring dogs, walk, jog, run. We have about 60 people, 60, 80 people, depending now the weather's been nice. It's really beautiful mornings. So encourage if anybody to come out and check that out. You don't have to sign up, but you can just take your time. But it's not competitive. We supply last place. And then just somewhat related to that, you may have seen an article in the Eagle that we just had a runner who completed his run of every street in Wichita. And he got all that. He's seen it all. I am jealous. I have about 25%. And so he's
you know if that's a hearing? Yeah, I think she real close.
She ain't nowhere near.
Okay.
There are so many streets.
I assume one.
Her goal is to run on every street.
Yeah, I could probably.
The dirt roads.
It includes all the stuff, all the dirt roads, and Becky even had to go back to some neighborhoods because they put new roads in at the time that it's become. So, you know, so again, why we're concerned about growth here is you don't need more to run. So just a couple running stuff, again, like Park Run, like I said, every Saturday, it's just gonna be great videos tonight. So you could find it. Yeah. If you want it, and actually, if you want to look at this guy's record, you can visit the website citystrides.com, and you can see each run for yourself. You can drag over it. It links to his run. And so you can see how he did it too. I don't play this. I did it 4 miles.
And they're also walkers.
Yeah. At Park.
Yeah.
All right, so it looks like it's gonna take them a few more minutes. So they are wrapping up at DAB 2. If you guys want to go ahead and take a 5 to 10 minute break, you guys are welcome to do so at this time.
Is that any
Yes. Yes, sorry about that.
I would like to invite all of you, I don't know if you know this or not, that we restarted the Delano Business Association.
Okay.
So the Delano Business.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
All right. I'm not sure.
We're on break for killing.
Yeah, so the Delano Business Association is starting back up. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is kind of figure out, the businesses that are down there, like how we can support each other and kind of grow. It used to be a community. We did a Christmas event. Now we're looking at, and we all kind of work together with this parade, to meet this land on top, and we're looking at some other events. We're going to be hosting them in Delano. That meeting is on the first Thursday, the first Thursday of the month, and meets at 2:00. Location right now is typically going to be senior services and their auditorium. And the Maggie came last month, Dalton Boss got to me quite a bit. So it'd be an opportunity, especially, from the district's perspective, to be kind of involved with the community, the businesses and going on. And if you know of any people that are business owners, that would like to come and we're still kind of struggling to overlap a little bit tonight. So.
Help me out, because I'm obviously out of the league. Who are you?
Am I? I'm the awesome Tracy girl. How do you not know?
Well, like I said, I am out of the loop.
Tracy, influencer.
Follow her.
No, I actually, I have been a business in District 1 and I live in District 6. So I do not have a neighborhood association right now. So we're kind of, it's funny that you mentioned that because I know, I guess, according to, yeah, it's the Big Bend or the Big Slough. So I used to be part of Pleasant Valley and Benjamin Hills, and we also had the district over by or the Orchard Park area. And so, but where I'm at now, it's not either one. So it's like we're the big Northwest Bend. I think that's what it's called. So.
Well, in terms of the businesses in Delano, there's several that are longstanding and established, Jack's and Warren and, Robert, but then there's a lot of others that, there's not been in there at all.
Right.
So I would say that's where they.
Well, and a lot of it, right? You have a lot of rental space, it's a business rental space, right? And so we all know, even from a business association, just like in the homeowners association, that we already have predominantly a lot of rentals. Then sometimes, getting people engaged in the neighborhood because they may rent at home, they may not be able to go to. So.
What's keeping the awards?
So senior services is going to be, basically just south of Douglas on Walnut. Across from the pickleball park. Yeah, across from the, it's in the district park, the pickleball court is next to me.
Don't be like the 90 where you are. Okay, Purdue or UConn? Who are you going Neither one. No. You're a football guy, no basketball. I want to sleep because I had to drive by car all over the streets. Yeah, no, that's, I don't want to put that mileage on my car.
To drive all the miles instead of running all the miles.
That's extremely. The mileage is good.
Well, there's a person just ran marathons north to south across the African continent. Every day he ran a marathon from the Cape to. Anyways. It's like 23 days in a row.
Oh, I got more.
340. 340 days.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoy it, so I'll finish listening the rest of it. I'm like,
Thanks for coming.
I listen to you guys all the time. I just,
Thanks for being here, Tracy.
Nice to
Good
meet you.
to see you, sir.
Thank you for coming.
It's got me. Yeah.
So just find your closest Teresa. So just find your closest neighborhood association that is active and start going. And start inviting your neighbors to go with you and saying, hey, we need to have our own. We live over here.
I was thinking of site, I was thinking about the site council.
What's the intersection? What's the main intersection for you?
So I'm actually close, I'm on Westland, so I'm like 13 Boulevard and there's something west. The Indian Hills, so we're not quite Indian Hills, we're just kind of that. I always call it the path, right? So just west of Cushman, that neighborhood over
What's what?
Big News,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
to that area west. So, yes, that's it. Well, yeah, so that's good in that funny because you have the.
Bye. Have a good one.
Good job.
Good to see you, John.
I'll get you at it. You're welcome. Have a good one. All right, they need just a few more minutes and then we'll go ahead and continue.
Have a good night.
Good to see you. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Good. Later. And we-
It's.
Joe, cereal.
Yes.
He can see you. Mhm.
Yes, I can.
He's there. Who glasses?
Yeah, well, since we're semi off the record, and I say semi, because anything I say in public.
It's still recording. Yeah, we're live on Facebook.
Repeat if you want to, we evidently, one of the neighborhood association presidents had questions from some other ones about doing a media interview last week. I don't know if the interview ever happened or not, but somebody reached out to me via phone. And they had no, we were doing a Zoom call, so we had 4 of us just get together for an hour and we we're on board about 13, and we did a level of collaboration, we said, we need to do this again. So whether or not we have the blessings of the city, or whether or not Wynn is doing what I feel is part of their job, we can still make things happen. It's part of the 80-20 rule, 20% of the people do 80% of the work.
Is Wynn, because I don't know, is Wynn a city function or is it?
No.
So
We had a non-profit organization, but they were one of the organizations that in the early 90s kicked off the formation of most of the neighborhood associations in town. And every year, way before the pandemic, they used to do something called the neighborhood university. Where neighborhood members, or neighborhood leaders could come and learn about the different functions of the city, or how to put together new things, those types of things.
So that's kind of like it's a two-day engagement. It's like it's those.
And there's no shortage of ideas of what could be done. But in fact, the last time they had an annual meeting, I was in this room a few hours before that, because we brought breakfast was here. And actually, as soon as it was over, to get over there, the day following, I think we had 3 of us that were at the breakfast.
Do they still actively meet?
They supposedly meet once a month, but I think only 4 a year are open to the public. I need to,
I was just on their website tonight and on that page.
Which
information?
when,
When, and I was reading through like their directory of neighborhood associations, it's not correct. There's a lot of outdates. Oh, I'm just curious.
No,
whether or not they
it
still
still
have
had, it still had, our previous,
See it, yeah,
I can't remember, blanking on his name.
yeah, so I was just curious. whether-
so we're working on that. Anna's seen a little bit of the emails going back and forth. I've been working with the city, a couple of different departments to say, we need quality, up-to-date information on who's going where. And so as an example, I was just showing, them is I made my own map of all the neighborhood associations. So when she says, hey, my neighborhood isn't covered, I can point you to, there's her neighborhood. And she's got three that, you know, we can have her kind of blend into it for a while. But if they wanted to just say, hey, we're gonna be our own section of the neighborhood, we can say, you're not currently representing the neighborhood. So
All right.
there's no official power or anything with any neighborhood association. In my opinion, we're just communications glue to help these six most important people in the entire city of employed, which by the way, we have a brand new one as a.
That's it, from District 1.
Yeah, Brandon's got a brand new.
All right, well, if you guys are ready, we do have our city staff with housing on our Zoom call, ready to go ahead and present on item number 9. Hi, Logan. Hi, Andrew, LaShondra.
Hi there. Sorry for our tardiness. We were trying to wrap up at District 2, so we appreciate your patience and are excited to dive into the presentation. Anna, would you like me to share my slides, or are you able to share your screen?
I am going to make you co-host, so you can go ahead and share your screen so
Okay.
you can forward presentation.
Let's see.
Give me just a second.
Okay, sounds good. Just let me know when it should be ready.
Will do. All right, Logan, you should be able to present your screen now.
Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, okay. Here we go. Share my screen. Screen 2. Sorry, y'all, it's getting late. My brain is not working the way that it did at 8 o'clock this morning. Okay, my name's Logan Bradshaw, and I'm the Assistant Department Director for the city's Housing and Community Services Department. And tonight we are here to speak with you about consolidated planning, annual action planning. These are plans that are required to be submitted by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development as a stipulation for receiving 3 federal entitlement grant programs, CDBG, Home, and ESG, which we'll go into more detail in later in this 32-slide presentation. So let's go to the next slide here. So each year we receive these funds from HUD, and we're required to submit associated planning documents. Like I mentioned, this is a 32-slide presentation. There's a lot of information. There are lots of complexities associated with these grants. The drafts that are currently available for public comment, here's that draft, and we'll have a link at the end of the presentation where you can access this on our website. As you can see, it's 376 pages long, so there's no way we're going to be able to get into every granular detail associated with these plan documents, but we are going to try and provide as high level of a review for you as possible in order to solicit your feedback and also tell you where you can find these planning documents in a greater level of detail, allow you to review them, and then tell you how you can help provide public comment after that's taken place. So moving back, I will go ahead and kick it over to Erica Fambro with WFN Consulting. This is our consulting firm that we have contracted with to help the city prepare 3 very important plan documents. And so Erica, I'll go ahead and kick it over to you. And you're muted. You're good.
Sorry about that. Okay, so like she said, I'm Erica Fambro. I'm with WFN Consulting. We've been working with the city since late last fall, working on the, hold just a moment. The doggy wants to make noise. Sorry about that. So yeah, we've been working with the city since last fall on these documents. The 3 documents that Logan described, the first 2 are the consolidated plan and the annual action plan. So the consolidated plan is a 5-year strategic plan where the city is identifying community development, affordable housing, homelessness needs, and priorities. And these are things that the city is required to do in order to figure out how they're going to use the grant funds that are provided to them. So over that 5 years, the city receives funding annually, and they are required to also complete what's called an annual action plan. So that annual action plan, it really talks about how the city is going to use that money, what projects they're going to undertake, what activities they might undertake to address the needs and goals that are identified in the 5-year strategic plan or consolidated plan. Okay, these plans really serve as a kind of an application for funding for the 3 grant programs: Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnerships, and the Emergency Solutions Grant. Okay, we can go to the next slide. The third document that we've assisted the city in preparing is called an Analysis of Impediments to Fair Housing Choice. And so that document is really a document that's it's required by the city to address communities' barriers and regarding fair housing and the actions that the community can take to improve access to equitable housing in the community. So these are some things that the city can take a look at to ensure that people are being able to access the housing that they can afford, housing that is fair to them. Okay, so Wichita must take actions to address any impediments that are discovered during this process by promoting fair housing for all protected classes. So this would be race, color, gender, sex, disability, age, all of those sorts of things. So the city's going to promote fair housing. They're going to provide opportunities for racially and ethnically inclusive housing patterns. Identifying structural and systemic barriers to fair housing choice. So that's taking a look at any laws or rules that are written or unwritten that are existing in the community and seeing how the city might be able to change those in order to make it a better living environment for people. And then promoting ADA accessible housing. So that's what the AI is, what we call it. The analysis of impediment is, it strives to do. And so during this process, we identified 7 impediments, and we can go to the next slide to look at those. I'll read these off to you. If you want to take a look at the actual document, we provide some additional discussion about these and some recommendations that the city can undertake to alleviate some of these issues. So discrimination in the rental market based on source of income. And when we say source of income, we're looking at, if a person is using a voucher, or if a person is receiving public assistance or Social Security or something of that nature as their source of income. We want to make sure that those folks aren't being discriminated because they don't have a traditional 9-to-5. The expense of tenant screening reports for low-income renters. Housing affordability. So that's a really, really big one. Housing affordability and cost burden. The cost of housing is, more expensive than what people can afford. So when we look at cost burden, we're looking at people who are paying more than 30% of their income for housing related expenses. Housing accessibility for disabled residents. We're looking at deficiency in fair housing education, underserved populations, and then public transportation infrastructure needs. So want to make sure that people are able to live in housing that's affordable and decent, but also be able to access, nutritious food and getting to work opportunities and things like that. Okay. So in this process, we kind of look at it in a cycle, this consolidated planning process. So number 1 is determining the needs. We've done that. Setting those priorities. We've done that. And we'll talk about that in the next slide. Determining what resources the city has. Obviously, the funding that will be provided by HUD is one of the resources. But then what other resources does the city have in order to address these priorities that we identified in number 2? Setting goals. So once we define those priorities, then we need to set some goals to so that we can meet those priorities and make changes in the community. So right now we're somewhere between 4 and 5. So we've set some goals and we've identified some priorities. And now we're waiting for approvals and funding to move into that next phase, which is administering those programs. So that's when we're actually working with clients. We are moving those projects along and things of that nature. That happens in number 5. So the last part of that process, number 6 there, you see evaluating performance. So after you've assisted all the clients and you've provided those services and people are happy and kind of moving along with their life, the city has the responsibility to provide some reporting back to the federal government. And that's done through a document called the CAPER. That's not something we're working on right now, but this is the ultimate goal of preparing these plans. At the end of that, we come back with a CAPER, and that CAPER, that stands for the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report. So that's something that the city has to do annually to let HUD know how they're using their funds. Okay. So we look at everything in a kind of this planned phase planning process. So phase 1, we came out, we met with all of the DABs, we met with, various groups and things like that back in the fall. And that was really phase 1, or what we call that community input phase. That's where we're doing stakeholder interviews. We are gathering data, things like that. We're meeting with your stakeholders. We're meeting with city staff. We're just gathering a lot of information about needs in the community. And then we took that back, went into phase 2. That's when we start to kind of crunch some numbers. We look at the information that we receive through the survey. We look at information that we receive through the just empirical data. So we're looking at census data. We're looking at affordability data. We're looking at all sorts of data. We're looking at all of the input that we've received from the community, input we've received from the survey. And we start to then develop those priorities that I talked about earlier. And that leads us to where we are right now, which is this phase 3 part of the process. And that's right now we're in what we call public comment period. So typically HUD requires the city to hold at least a 30-day minimum public comment period. The city of Wichita is a little bit north of that 30 days. So that's really good. You're giving people more opportunity to comment. So in this phase 3 part of the process, we're really taking an opportunity to get feedback from the community about the plans, about the priorities, about the goals that have been identified, making any revisions that are necessary, and then getting the document ready for submission to HUD. So prior to submission to HUD, we'll have to gain approval from City Council. We'll have a public hearing, and we'll talk about when those things take place at the end of this presentation. One thing I did want to mention, during this phase 1 and phase 2 part of the process, so we did hold some consultations with stakeholders, with nonprofits, with government agencies. We collected about 442 surveys, which is really good. We met with all of the DAB, the district advisory boards. And we had 5 general meetings with the public. So 2 meetings with the general public, 1 virtual, 1 in person, and then 3 meetings with stakeholders. So that was 2 virtual and 1 in-person stakeholder meeting. And what was really kind of identified in those meetings were homelessness was a big issue. It came up in almost every single meeting. Affordable housing, or I should say housing affordability is is a better way of saying that. That came up in almost every meeting, just kind of across the gamut. The stakeholders really kind of opened our eyes to the need for some substance abuse treatment and mental health things. So I'm sure they see it at a more acute level. Some of the public infrastructure things that came up were sidewalks. Those have been mentioned quite a bit during the in the surveys, and then also in the public meeting. So we can go to the next slide. So the priority needs that we identified in this process were access to affordable housing, homelessness reduction, access to public services, non-housing community development, affirmatively furthering fair housing, and then planning and administration. So these are some of the things that the city's going to work on over the next 5 years. And so under those broad categories of priority needs are some goals. So for each of the priority needs, we have some goals outlined here. So for access to affordable housing, we're looking at home repair for homeowners, home ownership assistance, so that's like down payment assistance to assist low-income families with participating in home ownership. Financial assistance for affordable rental housing. So these might be subsidies. This could be assisting with security deposits to assist folks with maintaining housing or obtaining housing. Affordable housing development, just what it sounds like, building or constructing or rehabbing housing that's affordable to people at that 80% median income. Okay. So access.
Question real quick.
Sure.
On that, you say goals, but underneath that, is there a structure of actual goals with measurables or deliverables that are tied to those specific elements?
Yes, it is. And that's identified in the actual plan. Little bit much to go through specifically in this presentation, but it is identified in the plan. It'll give you some goal outcome indicators, what we're looking for specifically, like for example, with home ownership assistance, we'll take that one. The goal outcome indicator might be the number of households served, how many we're looking to serve. And in some later slides, Ryan will go over some different, the different projects and activities, and then it'll also show the funding levels. So you'll see how much you'll be able to, how many people you'll be able to serve. And so those things are identified in the actual plan. Okay, so homelessness reduction, access to public services. This is the human and public services. We have a slide that kind of goes through and gives a little bit more detail about what those activities are in a few slides. And then homelessness reduction, supportive services for the homeless, and then that financial assistance for affordable rental housing. So this might be assisting someone with gaining permanent housing or assisting someone with remaining in permanent housing. So that's done through subsidies, like I said before, and or security deposit. Okay. So non-housing community development. So this is everything you can think of in the community that's not related to housing. So this would be activities like park improvements, like sidewalks, so that infrastructure improvement, that includes those sorts of activities. Blight reduction in the community. So if there are dilapidated houses that need to be removed, this blight reduction is a category that the city has identified, or a goal that's been identified. Public facility acquisition. So looking at any sort of community center, or the multi-agency center is one that has come up as of late. So things of that nature. And then human and public services. So some of those activities that'll be identified in future slides would fall under this category. Okay. Affirmatively furthering fair housing, that's just what I talked about under the analysis of impediments, so that the city undertaking activities to ensure that people are aware of their fair housing rights, and then their fair housing responsibility. When you think about landlords and property managers and lenders and things of that nature. So everyone has a role to play. And it's really about making sure that the general public understands what their rights are, and understand what to do if their rights are being violated. And then planning and administration, just what it sounds like, the program administration. This allows Logan and her team to administer the various programs and to ensure compliance with the grant requirements and things like that. And so that's something that is allowable under the grant, and the city will undertake that as well. And I will kick this
Quick
back.
question, if you go
Yes,
back,
sure.
on non-housing, and community development, does that take into account, the ecosystem of say like public transportation, or, access to schools, or access to food, those things?
All of that falls under non-housing community development. Yes.
Thanks, Erica. Logan and I are going to go over program year 24-25, the first year annual action plan, and the program year 24-25 that'll kick off starting July 1st of this year and run through June 30th of next year. That's how our program years fall. It's not like a regular calendar year. It's, like I said, July 1st through June 30th of the following year. And we don't have our award amounts yet from HUD for 24-25. They have not yet been released. We do anticipate, like for CDBG and ESG, those staying about the same. We do see potentially a slight cut in home, which Logan can go into more detail here in a few minutes. But for the purpose of our discussion and planning, we're going to use the current funding allocations that we're receiving for the program year that we're in right now, which is 23-24. And you'll see on your screen, CDBG right now, a little over $2.9 million goes towards CDBG, 1.7 million for home, and $255,040 for ESG. And these are formula grants. We can't, exchange funds from one grant to the other. These are given to us by HUD. Like, we can't determine, these are just predetermined for us. And so what we see kind of is what we get there as far as the funding for each program. Starting off for CDBG, and just kind of as a reminder, CDBG is Community Development Block Grants. And these funds can be used for a wide range of community development needs. For example, on your screen, public facilities and improvements, housing, public services, and we can use these CDBG funds for those types of projects and activities. And again, CDBG right now, a little over 2.9 million in funding currently receiving for that. In order for an activity or a program to be eligible for CDBG, first it must meet one of 3 national objectives. It must benefit low to moderate income individuals. prevent slums or blights, address urgent community needs. And whenever we're looking to spend CDBG dollars, we have to ensure that it's for an activity that is eligible for CDBG. So we obviously have to do our due diligence there and make sure everything is aligned with federal regs and CDBG rules and regulations. Not less than 70% of spending must benefit low to moderate income persons. And public services, going to get into that here in a little bit more detail, but here in the city, we are traditionally public services heavy. Approximately 30% of our award goes towards public services. Normally there's a public services cap of 15%, but here in the city, we're actually grandfathered in at that little over $1.1 million annually for public services.
Andrew, I have a question. Well, is there any place in here that's looking at addressing some of the homeless needs, I'm sorry, housing development needs that's in a way that is not encouraging sort of homogeneous development, so that it's more like, how do we create housing that addresses a variety of income levels in the same area? I mean, are those kinds of things being considered in any of this, or is it all just, is it something else together?
What was the word you said? You cut out just slightly before development. What type of development that encourages?
The housing development.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe there was a different description. Yes, we typically encourage and like to see projects that have exactly what you're talking about. So market rate apartments. Also, can you hear me? I think my AirPods just died. Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So you're just in this one now, but we typically like to, support projects that are, might have retail on the bottom ground and might have a good mix of like market rate apartments and affordable housing. We also like to support projects that might have a mix of affordable homeownership opportunities as well as rental opportunities too. Those are things that, as we look at the challenges that we know we're going to continue to face in the next 5 years, that will be really, really important. Typically in the past, most of our home dollars, and I'll get into this on a future slide when I talk about housing development loan program dollars, but typically the majority of our investment has gone towards single family, new construction, home ownership opportunities. We'd really like to see more potentially rental projects come through on that funding source as well. And yes, we would like to support projects exactly like what you're describing, that have a mix of income levels, a mix of that are racially diverse and diverse in terms of gender composition, that allow for multiple different family types, whether that be a single person or a family. So to answer your question, yes, that is something that we are hoping to achieve in the next 5 years, but it's not something that's explicitly described in the plan as a stipulation, if that was your question.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
We're on the next slide. There we go. And we'll start here with CDBG infrastructure projects. We're looking to allocate prior year resources of $319,270 towards infrastructure projects. And just kind of touch on prior year resources. These are funds that are carried over from previous program year into this current consolidated plan period. And in respects to infrastructure projects, we're looking to, for projects that include park improvements, bus shelters, sidewalks, street paving, stormwater, sewers, draining projects, activities and projects of that nature.
Will you want to describe prior year resource and how that's different than just allocation?
Yeah, we touched on it's the funding that's carried over from previous program years that we're able to carry over into this current consolidated plan period. Next, CDB demolition and clearance. We're looking to allocate a total of $50,000 towards demo and clearance. We have a MOU, memorandum of understanding agreements with MABCD, and funding will be used for the demolition and clearance of blighted structures. Their staff identifies those and they send those to us, and we are able to fund those with that amount right there. Next, we have the multi-agency center. Section 108 loans. These are funds that are from a actual special CDBG project that we're able to allocate towards the multi-agency center, and that amounts $620,925. And again, we're going to carry those funds into the next consolidated plan period to actually acquire a public facility, the multi-agency center, which is going to service provision for the homeless in Wichita. Next, we have home repair, which is one of our more popular programs that we have in our department. But we're looking to allocate a little over $1.1 million for the home repair program. And you can kind of see how that breaks down there with the project funds of $710,000, and then the home repair program delivery of $460,000. Acquisition, disposition, and rehabilitation. Again, these are going to be prior year resources that we're able to allocate towards this project in the amount of $377,427. This is, like I said, funding previously allocated to the Wichita Land Bank. It's going to be actually used to support acquisition, disposition, holding costs, rehabilitation, demo and clearance of real property. The end goal here is to use the land and real property for affordable housing development. Admin, CDBG administration, we have a cap here of 20% that we can allocate towards CDBG administration. And so you can see how that breaks down there, a little under $600,000 towards that. It's broken up into program management and fair housing, and then just some indirect costs as well. And we've touched on it a couple times, so I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about public services. Again, we're grandfathered in at that amount of a little over $1.1 million for public services. And that kind of breaks down here on the screen, a little over $103,000 towards the Housing First program delivery. And then we go at $475,000 via RFP. That's for our public services RFP. It's going to switch up a little bit different this time around. In the past, we've gone out for RFP with this chunk of funding, specifically for domestic violence shelter services and youth crime prevention and enrichment services. Those were the two things that was being funded with that chunk of money there. This time, due to the community outreach that we've gotten last fall, feedback that we've gotten from meetings with the community, and we're actually looking to open up a general RFP for these funds. These can be public services from, like we mentioned, youth crime prevention, domestic violence shelter services, homelessness, public safety, a wide variety of public services that can be funded with this money. And so we're going to open that up, like I said, via RFP, which we're looking to get released here really quick. So that's going to be hitting pretty soon. And then $200,000 goes towards the Way to Work program. That's our TWCW program, our summer employment program that we have every single year for kids ages 14 through 17. They can actually get employment and start working over the summer. And then $385,000 goes towards Office of Community Services. That helps with the costs of like Atwater, Evergreen, and Colvin centers here in town. Take it over to Logan for the home and ESG information.
All right, like Ryan mentioned, I'm going to cover the last two funding sources that we're here to speak with you about tonight. First being Home Investment Partnerships Program. This is just like its name. This is all about creating affordable housing opportunities for low to moderate income households. Households that are beneficiaries of Home Investment Partnerships Program projects have to be at or below 80% of the area median income. Income limits get updated every year and are dependent on household size. So for the current income limits that we're operating under, a household of 4 cannot make more than $68,100 in order to benefit from a program under Home. Just to give you some perspective of what we're talking about when we talk about income restricted programs. Again, we are estimating about $1.7 million to come in for the next program year. But like Ryan mentioned, unfortunately, we do not have our funding allocation amounts yet. So we're basing them off of current year allocations. Just like with CDBG, we are proposing to take the maximum amount off the top for program administration and indirect charges. For Home, CDBG is capped at 20%, Home is capped at 10% of the award. Indirect charges are fees that are levied by the city to our department to pay for internal services such as human resources, information technology, finance, basically to collect a share of dollars to be able to support their operations. Every single year, the indirect cost rate changes, but that 10% of the grant is what we have outlined for both of those funding categories. The rest would go towards paying staff salaries, paying potentially for consultants to help us, come in and administer our programs and stay in compliance. We're utilizing Home administration dollars as well as CDBG administration dollars to pay for the consultants that you spoke with this evening to pay for the development of this plan. The next project within Home that we're proposing for the upcoming program year is a down payment assistance program to help income eligible individuals and families who are first time home buyers become home buyers. This can help with down payment as well as closing cost assistance. The last program that you see on this slide is something that's new to us with respect to Home. We are proposing to implement what's called a TBRA program. We live in a world of acronyms. That stands for Tenant-Based Rental Assistance. We'd like to pilot this to see how it goes, to see if there's need and demand. We know that there is currently, but we'd like to start it out with $150,000 in Home program funds. And essentially this would be a program that could provide assistance with securing funds for security deposits for individuals who are homeless, who are utilizing rental assistance in conjunction with one of the programs that's operated within our department. So we're presenting to you on behalf of our community development or community, you might hear it called a community investments division, but we have 3 other major divisions within our department, including the Wichita Housing Authority, which administers our Section 8 or our Housing Choice Voucher program. We currently have a homeless preference within the Section 8 program. So we have a lot of individuals who are homeless who are securing housing assistance. We also have a Housing First program that Ryan mentioned a little bit about. That's a program that provides general fund resources, one of the very few general funds that's actually administered out of our department, that helps chronically homeless individuals secure housing. And it's called Housing First because it implements a Housing First model, which if anyone has questions about that, we'd be happy to talk about that at the end of the presentation. We also have a rapid rehousing program that helps individuals who are literally homeless, but that have income to be able to support paying for rent and utility assistance, but might not have enough funds to actually get into an apartment initially. That rapid rehousing program provides up to 2.5 months of rental assistance, as well as in the past, security deposit assistance programming. And so we anticipate that, can you hear me? I think my last AirPod just died. You can still hear me? Okay, great. We are proposing to implement a tenant-based rental assistance or a TBRA program to be able to provide security deposit financial assistance to those homeless individuals who are accessing one of those programs. We learned within the consolidated planning consultation process that, and we really learned from firsthand experience of administering these programs for the homeless, that is a huge barrier for these individuals. Oftentimes people who are homeless don't necessarily have enough money to pay for a security deposit, in addition to multiple application fees. As you can imagine, a lot of these individuals who are unhoused in our community, it can be really, landlords just don't want to rent to those individuals, and that's a very sad, simple reality. So they're oftentimes having to pay for multiple application and tenant screening fees, which is a huge cost burden to individuals who oftentimes might have Social Security income or disability income, or a very, very small amount of money coming in each month. And so we are proposing to create this program to help our teams more efficiently and effectively house homeless individuals in our community, which is one of our priority needs, homelessness reduction. Moving on to more of what you might traditionally think about when you think about home, the building and development of affordable housing. So we are proposing to do this through our Housing Development Loan Program, which provides gap subsidy funding for and nonprofit developers to develop affordable housing. This could be rental housing, this could be homeownership housing, this could be single family housing, this could be multifamily housing. This could be proposing to rehab existing housing stock for an end use of affordable opportunity, or this could be construction on infill lots or in a planned unit development. You name it, this program could essentially do it, as long as the end use of the housing that's built is to an affordable end. It's accessible to individuals who are at or below that 80% AMI, and ensuring that that household is not going to be cost burdened by that housing. So ensuring that that household's not paying more than 30% all in, excuse me, all in on their housing costs, which would include if it was a mortgage or their rent plus their utilities, it would be less than 30% of their monthly income. We are required by HUD to ensure that 15% of our home allocation on an annual basis goes to what's called Community Housing Development Organizations, or CHODOs. And so we are proposing to manage that requirement that's imposed on us by the federal government and as a stipulation of home through our Housing Development Loan Program. So we have 2 active CHODOs that are currently developing housing in Wichita. That would be Mennonite Housing Rehabilitation Services, Inc. and Jacob's Ladder. We also have funded a CHODO in the past called Power CDC. They developed a ton of affordable housing stock in Northeast Wichita, and it really have left a legacy in that area. They're not currently undertaking new projects right now, but that's one that we worked with in the past and that you might recognize. We are proposing to manage that 15% through HDLP by applying a scoring preference for CHODOs throughout that process, at least until we hit the required allocation amount, and then for any given year. We don't have an issue meeting that CHODO set aside requirement, and really haven't in the past, and don't anticipate issues in the future. Those HDLP applications for that gap financing to make affordable housing projects happen are reviewed by a technical board called the Affordable Housing Review Board, with ultimate funding recommendations made by that board to City Council to determine whether or not an agency is going to get funded under this program. As I mentioned, Community Housing Development Organization, a special type of organization that has to meet the stipulations outlined on this slide. I would say the biggest challenge for organizations to meet would be this community representation on their board. They have to have representation from low-income communities, and oftentimes the board composition for nonprofit developers for nonprofit developers does not meet that requirement. So a lot of people are very surprised to hear that Habitat for Humanity in our area, specifically In other areas, they do qualify as CHOTOs, but not here, and it's really because of this community representation on their board. They lack that requirement to have individuals on the board representing low-income areas within their bylaws for that board. So let's see here.
Logan, could you please explain the bullet point right below that, the lack of for-profit or public control?
Yes, these can't, government agencies can't qualify as CHOTOs even if they're doing this work, and it can't be a for-profit corporation. I misspoke initially. It has to be a nonprofit organization.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so that wraps up home. The last thing we'll talk about is ESG, or Emergency Solutions Grant. This is the very, very tiny pot of funding that we have from the feds to address homelessness in our community. I will preface this section by saying that, just like Erica said, the majority of feedback we got in the public consultation phase 1 of the process was directly related to homelessness. As you can see, that is not proportional when you consider how much funding we actually have to carry out those types of projects in our community with the resources we have from HUD. That said, I do want to point out that CDBG public service dollars can be used to fund homeless service provision in some aspects, not every single aspect, but it can be funded. Homeless service programming can be funded through CDBG public services. And so that's another kind of reason that we opened that RFP process up and not just set aside funds for 2 specific funding sources, and open it up to kind of pretty much, if an organization wants to propose a CDBG eligible public service activity, we could, as long as, you know, the application and their program design meets federal requirements, we would open it up and would be actually a public service activity. So did want to point out that that is another resource that we could use. Additionally, we're obviously proposing to tailor some home resources, that $150,000 for the TIGRA program, to meet homelessness or to address homelessness in our community. But just wanted to that currently exists within our community before diving in. ESG can be used for a few different types of activities. These are the ones that we are proposing to carry out with ESG funds. The first would be shelter services. So that could include providing operations support to ensure that a homeless shelter can operate. It could be, you know, keeping overhead, you know, the lights on, things like that. It could even actually help to construct or even rehab existing homeless shelter facilities. Now, the thing that we need to point out about this is that not more than 60% of the ESG grant can be spent towards that first bullet point for shelter services. And so you'll see in future slides, we are proposing to take the maximum 60% of our anticipated allocation for shelter services. That said, we have gotten a lot of feedback that there's not enough prevention programming within our community. And prevention, homeless prevention, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a program to prevent someone from entering homelessness in the first place. And so that's obviously providing rent and or utility assistance to keep someone stably housed. We have, you know, the pandemic, there was an influx of rental assistance programming, and then when that all dried up, it's a lot of people are being displaced because there's no longer any resources. And so we heard that loud and clear. We've also heard, you know, even in the current 5-year period, the planning process for that, and in the annual action planning periods, that, you know, they'd like to see more of these dollars go towards preventing someone from becoming homeless versus, you know, treating homelessness with shelter services. And so we took that into consideration and are actually recommending increasing the amount, maybe making available for homeless prevention up to $50,000 from $38,000. And it's still not a ton of money, of course, but we did hear that, and so we did increase the amount of dollars that we will be putting towards this category. The last program that we'll talk about is rapid rehousing. So I talked about this. This is a program that would provide extremely short-term, no more than 2.5 months of assistance to someone who is literally homeless. Now, this is not for your chronically homeless person or your homeless person who has like $0 and no income. This would be for individuals who might have had an episodic instance of homelessness. So maybe someone who got laid off from their job, living paycheck to paycheck, lost their housing, living out of their car. Maybe they found another job, they continue to have income. So this is, or maybe they have guaranteed income through a various other source, but went through something in their life that made them homeless. This would provide up to 2.5 months of assistance to get that household or that individual back housed, and a little bit of assistance to get them on their feet, and then their responsibility, it would be on their responsibility to be able to maintain their housing after that. What I will say is, because we're taking the max 60% here, which is this 153,024, and increasing the amount for prevention, it essentially created a cut to the rapid rehousing program. And so typically we're anywhere between 50 and 70,000 in the rapid rehousing pot. We're going to be down to about 32,888. Now, in the past, that program would pay for security deposit assistance, and that's going to be picked up or covered through that TBRA program I mentioned. And so we do anticipate still being able to serve about the same number of households with this, because our dollar's going a little bit further, because we're paying for the funding for the security deposit under another source, if that makes sense. And then typically our process is, if any of these other categories underspend for any reason, we usually will put the remainder back into rapid rehousing, because that's a program that we administer in-house. That doesn't happen very often, and when it does happen, it's not a ton of money left over, but that could be another way to kind of replenish that rapid rehousing pot if any of these other ones underspend. And so getting into the granular detail of what we're proposing for ESG, which I've kind of already shown you a little bit and talked about. I won't talk anymore about homeless prevention, other than the fact that those funds are made available via an RFP process. So that wouldn't be the city of Wichita administering the prevention program. That would be administered by an agency within our community that would apply for those funds through an RFP process. This is a huge change from how we've operated in the past. So in the past, we've made about 60% of the ESG grant available for shelter service providers. In the community consultation phase 1 of the process, it became evidently clear that this community does not have an ongoing funding source to support winter shelter operations. We have funded winter shelter for the past few years with COVID resources, and that's how we funded it this year as well, from the American Rescue Plan Act. As well, we've also funded it in the past from the CARES Act funding that our department received. And so we recognize that, and recognize the grave need to provide winter shelter, to have a winter shelter operating in our community, because put simply, if there was not somewhere for individuals to go in the winter during those harsh winters, people would die, and that's not an option in our community. And so not funding winter shelter isn't an option. We recognize this could be an ongoing source of funds that could help to sustain winter shelter operations. And so for this current program year, we are proposing to make 60% of the ESG grant available via an RFP process, specifically for an operator of a winter shelter during the 24-25 program year. In the past, we've had about 7 different organizations splitting up about $138,000. So from a administration perspective, that's 7 contracts that we have to manage, and we can only take about 7.5% for a staff person for that. And so that's extremely burdensome as well. And so making the funds available specifically for winter shelter operations for providers in our community that might want to carry out that type of a service is what our plan is currently. We are thinking we will propose doing this again for the second program year. We're not planning for that right now, but that is something that's on our horizon, making that 60% available for winter shelter operations specifically, with anticipation that the 60% would then support a congregate shelter option at the multi-agency center, or MAC, that the city is currently working to develop. There is a huge need, we learned, and we kind of knew this already, but there's a huge need for a low barrier 24/7 shelter operation in this community. Almost all of the service provision for the homeless takes place during regular business hours. And as you can imagine, people are homeless outside of that period of time as well, and are in need of services during, in other ways as well. Our amazing homeless outreach team doesn't just work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but if all of the other community providers that address homelessness in our community are not working on those extra, like maybe third shift or on the weekends, then it makes it really hard for the homeless outreach team to provide assistance to homeless persons on the non, I think you get what I'm trying to say, outside of the typical business hours. And so that would be kind of the plan for the shelter service piece of ESG, would be to support operation of a congregate shelter at the multi-agency center in the future. Again, we're not planning for that right now, but just to kind of make you aware of what we're thinking at the moment. And of course, plans could change, and oftentimes do. Rapid rehousing, I kind of already talked about this a little bit. We're proposing about $32,000 there, and then that's 7.5% for program administration and indirect charges. So before I kick it back over to Erica to talk about next steps and important dates and things to be aware of during our current public comment period, I wanted to talk a little bit about the citizen participation plan that is referenced within your agenda report. And at the very last document within our public comment packet is our proposed draft of the citizen participation plan. Not a ton is recommended to be changed within this document. I'm sure you've heard, there's a lot of conversation right now with how the city engages with the public. Some of the updates in this plan are to kind of align with what we're hearing through that process. Which is really our communications team with the city is kind of spearheading that. Some of it is just tightening up things that probably should have been updated a while ago, like our old address. We're now in City Hall. There's also further clarification on what constitutes a substantial amendment. So we are required to do our annual action plan each year. And if we have to make a big change to our annual action plan or a big change to an already approved consolidated plan, then we need to do a substantial amendment. So it further clarifies what instances we would need to do a substantial amendment. And I think that's basically all with respect to that I wanted to highlight for the citizen participation plan, but just wanted to note that we are taking public comment related to that as well. And then the last thing is that we are soliciting a grants review committee nominee that is a member of District 6. I don't believe one has been submitted yet. And so if you guys want more information or anything like that, I believe Anna has the memo where we kind of describe that, as well as tentative meeting dates. The GRC, the Grants Review Committee, is going to review proposals that are submitted for ESG prevention, as well as CDBG Public Services RFP. And like Ryan mentioned, we expect to release that any day. So at this point, I'm going to kick it over to Erica to cover the last couple slides, and then we will get your feedback.
Great. So I'm just going to talk about some of the important dates and next steps in this process. Right now, we are in the public comment period. It started on April 5th and it'll run through May 14th. The city is required to do a 30-day public comment period. And as you can see, this is a little bit more than the 30 days, which is perfectly fine under HUD's guidelines. So we're in that 30-day comment period. We'll get some feedback from you all after this slide. We are meeting with all 6 of the DAB groups. So today we met with DAB 2 and now currently with DAB 6. And then on May 1st, we'll meet with DAB 3. And then May 6th, we will meet 1, 4, and 5. Then we're gonna come back out to the city and conduct some community meetings. So we have 2 that are virtual on April 22nd at 6 p.m. and then April 24th at 10 a.m. And both of those are via Zoom. And then on May 13th, we'll be back in Wichita to host an in-person meeting at the Advanced Learning Library. And that'll take place at 4 p.m. So we'll be there in person to solicit feedback from the community, from your stakeholders, things like that. And then on the morning of May 14th, there'll be a public hearing at City Council. And then the documents will be voted on by City Council on that same day. We're still waiting for award notification from HUD. So as soon as HUD lets us know what the city's allocation will be, the plans will be updated with those final numbers. And then the plan will have to be submitted to HUD no later than 60 days after the city's notified of what that award amount will be. So that's kind of next steps in that process. What we're looking for today is a recommendation, recommendations that you all provide comment during this process. If you don't want to provide comment verbally here today, there are some other alternatives for you to be able to provide that comment. It just needs to be into Andrew by May 13th. So that's by email, by phone, or by mail. And you can see his email listed there, atyree@wichita.gov. Phone number there if you want to call him up and give him your input, or you can write a letter and send that over. Full drafts of the documents are available on the city's website at the Housing and Community Services page. So you'll see the have full access to the document on the city's website. So at this time, I'll open it up for any comments or questions you may have about the document.
I just have one quick one, and we don't have to get super into it, but, and this might be for our WFN folks too, but I'm just kind of curious, the city has been, over the past couple of years, like jettisoning its own public housing stock, which seems kind of weird to me because I would assume like a city would want, in order to address housing, to like acquire more public housing for itself, or move some of that housing from the market to make it more accessible for people. Are you seeing are other cities abandoning public housing in that sense? Do you work, well, first, do I understand, do you work with other cities and see kind of how they're doing? Are there examples of cities that are increasing their public housing stock to try to address this? Did I miss where we might be like using that as a strategy, or is there a reason why we're not even looking at it at all?
Well, that's not something that I don't have an authority on public housing. Cities can use a various ways of addressing affordability issues, addressing public housing. HUD has recently, public housing is authorized under HUD, but as of late, HUD hasn't been providing a lot of funding for public housing in the way that it has traditionally taken care of that. So a lot of cities are converting their housing programs under a different program model, and the city has chosen to convert theirs in a different way. So I think Logan's probably more apt to speak to the reasons why the city may have chosen to go the direction that that you all have decided. So I'll defer to her for that one.
Sure, thanks, Erica. And really, I could talk about this for a couple hours, and we obviously don't have time for that tonight. So if you want to, talk about this more later, I'd be happy to sit down and chat with you. But it's exactly for the reason that Erica mentioned. HUD is actually actively encouraging housing authorities to seek what they call, quote, repositioning methods. If you Google HUD Exchange public housing repositioning, they have entire toolbooks associated with, how you can reposition public housing, because Congress does not fund it at the level that it needs to keep our properties up in the condition that anyone should be living in. Some of the state of our public housing units is absolutely deplorable, and I wouldn't want anybody I know to have to live in those units, and we just don't get enough resources from HUD to make them sustainable. We used to have 578 units of affordable housing under our public housing program. We successfully converted 226, which was our multifamily portfolio, under a program called Rental Assistance Administration, or RAD, which actually allows housing authorities to take on private debt to make the necessary repairs, because nationwide there's like I don't know what it is today because I haven't looked at it in a little while, but over like $26 billion in deferred maintenance on public housing units because of the way that the federal government reposition strategy is. We still have 337 units currently. I believe we have 2 that are slated to be sold this week. So it should be down to like 335 by the end of the week, but we can talk more about that if you'd like.
So I heard that there's $50,000 for homeless prevention, and then under another program, $50,000 for lighted structure demolition. I'm curious how many homeless you could prevent for $50,000 and how many lighted structures you could demolish for $50,000. I get that there's limits on what we can spend on that, and there's different programs involved in this. I'm curious to know how many people these programs are going to touch.
Sure. So for the demos, we're seeing those come in. It depends on the age of the structure. It depends on if there needs to be a sewer sealed off or asbestos remediated before the structure actually comes down, which would be stipulated by federal requirements. We're seeing those come in anywhere from about $7,000 all in, anywhere up to the highest one I've seen recently is about $20,000. So it really depends on which properties are identified and which properties end up coming down. Fun fact about MABCD and demolitions is that more than half of the time, the outcome of a property that starts down the condemnation process is not demolition. So sometimes a private owner, if the property changes hands, it stops the demolition process. If somebody comes in and makes the necessary repairs, it stops the demolition process. MABCD, her name's Kaylin Nethercott, would be more apt to talk about that in a greater level of detail, but that kind of gives you some perspective on MABCD. For homelessness prevention, we usually prevent homelessness with the $38,000 we had been setting aside for that for about 32 households. So I guess my brain can't do math after 8 o'clock, but you can kind of do the math, try and figure out what that would be for the 50. I can't remember the number we put in our plan, but it was proportionate to that.
I can do that. Thank you.
Yeah. So hopefully that gives you some perspective.
Is there anything else? Okay. Well, if there are no other comments, that's all that we have today. And like I said, those things that we mentioned earlier will take place over the next 30 to 45 days or so. And that's really all we have for this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
All right, well, with that, we can go ahead and call a motion if you guys don't have anything else to discuss tonight. All right. All right, all in favor?
All right.
Sergio?
Yeah, I'm here
He's here, and he's taking the whole time.
the whole time.
There you go.
Lisa left her vote in her.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.